Hello and welcome. This is Business Incorporated on Channels Television. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. On the program today, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari presents 2021 budget of 13.08 trillion naira, prioritizing completion of projects for capital expenditure. World Bank sees sub-Saharan Africa GDP rebounding in 2021, says further 150 million people face extreme poverty by 2022. And Nigeria's former Finance Minister Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and South Korea's first female trade minister emerge as the final two in the race to lead the World Trade Organization. We'll begin the show here in Nigeria, where President Muhammadu Buhari has presented the 2021 proposed budget before a joint session of the National Assembly. According to the President, the 13.08 trillion naira budget, termed Budget of Economic Recovery and Resilience, will address key economic issues as the country tries to recover from the impact of the coronavirus and the oil price drop. It says the government is determined to accelerate the country's economic recovery process while decrying the revenue generation challenge. All right, let's get some market numbers, which were mostly negative in Africa, except for Egypt's main index. The negative sentiment seen in the Nigerian market yesterday spilled into Thursday's trading as the index declined 0.47% at intraday. South Africa's JSE index also declined 0.45%. In Egypt, the main index advanced marginally by 0.01%, while Kenya closed positive on Wednesday. And it was a different picture in the Middle East, where major markets were in the positive territory. The Qatari index advanced by 1%, while Saudi Arabia's index added 0.37%. In the UAE, Abu Dhabi's main index rose 0.40%, while Dubai's index was marginally higher by 0.07%. And major averages in Europe rose sharply in early trade after President Donald Trump tweeted support for aid to airlines and other stimulus measures, stoking hopes that a smaller aid package could be passed by lawmakers. Investors are also remain on the spread of COVID-19. Let's hear more from Chelsea. Hello, Chelsea. Good afternoon. Well, European stocks are in positive territory, even as countries including Austria, France, and Spain report a record number of coronavirus cases. Are investors worried yet about the outbreaks?
We really haven't seen investors focusing much on the coronavirus situation in the past couple of weeks. All eyes have really been on the U.S. stimulus measures. So we have seen a lot of fluctuation, a lot of volatility in markets based on the status of those talks. So now, as you mentioned today, as there does seem to be a little bit of hope for at least some sort of stimulus, we are seeing stocks rise. Here in Frankfurt, the DAX is up about 0.6%. We also see the broader Euro Stocks Index of about 0.5%. So that's really overshadowing for now the really worrying situation with coronavirus outbreaks here. We heard from the health minister here in Germany earlier today that we're on the verge of a pandemic outbreak that we can't really control. So there definitely are a lot of concerning statements coming from governments. Markets still are not really taking heed of that. We've seen this in the past, though, where investors tend to be quite optimistic about coronavirus situation until it suddenly changes very quickly. So a lot of investors are saying that while we are not seeing much concern about this right now, we could be approaching the point in which these fears really start to hit home, especially as we do see more and more governments having to take dramatic steps to contain the virus, including Belgium, which has shut all bars and cafes for a month, and France has also taken similar steps. And here in Germany, we're seeing states and cities implement curfews coming this weekend. So all of this will have an economic impact, and at some point, it will catch up to the markets.
In the meantime, low-cost airline EasyJet warns that it will post its first ever annual loss this year due to the virus. What is the state of the airline industry right now?
It's still very much a bleak outlook for the global airline industry. We had seen a recovery over the summer for European airlines in particular, as governments here tried to ease restrictions so that people could take holidays, so that people could visit other travel hotspots within the EU. It was very important from an economic perspective to make sure that some of these tourism-related economies still had some visitors. But now that we're moving into the fall, we definitely are seeing more and more restrictions put in place for travel, and that will have a very significant impact on the travel industry. EasyJet, for one, which has never posted a loss before, says it could post a loss of about $1 billion this year. So that's a very dramatic turn for them. They also now expect to only fly for the fourth quarter at capacity of about 25%. They had previously been looking at something around half of capacity, so they really are starting to take down their expectations for the rest of the year to really temper those forecasts. We've seen this from other airlines as well, including Lufthansa here in Germany, which says that it's only expecting to fly about 20 to 30% of capacity for the rest of the year. And these airlines are already very cash-strapped. They're losing over $400 million a day. So this will put much more financial pressure on airlines and potentially drive some out of business.
And Germany began a parliamentary inquiry today into the implosion of fintech firm Wirecard, which went bankrupt this year after an accounting scandal was uncovered. What could come out of this?
This is definitely going to shine the spotlight on the German government, and particularly the finance minister, Olaf Scholz, and also Chancellor Angela Merkel. There has been a lot of questions into how much the government knew and why more action wasn't taken. It's just as a quick recap, Wirecard was a financial payments processing firm. They really boomed in Germany, and they joined the DAX here in Frankfurt. It was really a success story for the German tech scene. But over the summer, it was revealed that there was about $2 billion missing from their balance sheet, and all of that really devolved into a much broader accounting scandal. But the government had been warned about these allegations of fraud at Wirecard for several years. There had been media reports. Investors had raised concerns about this, and instead of actively investigating those claims, we saw prosecutors open investigations into journalists. We saw the financial regulator ban short selling or betting against the Wirecard stock. So they really didn't take these concerns seriously. So it likely will focus a lot, this inquiry, onto why the government seems so willing to ignore these red flags to help protect this company, whether there was some sort of political influence. And that will raise a very difficult political situation, especially as we head into an election year for both the finance minister and Chancellor Merkel's party.
All right, thank you very much for your time, Chelsea. And in the UK, EasyJet had a message for the government this morning. The airline industry needs more help fast to see it through the worst crisis in its history. Meanwhile, the Bank of England's Financial Policy Committee released a statement on the UK's financial stability following its latest meeting last week. And that's where I will be starting my conversation with Juliana this afternoon. Good afternoon, Juliana. The Bank of England's Financial Policy Committee fears that corporate insolvencies will rise as the jump in COVID-19 cases hits the economy. How are the markets reading these minutes by the BOE?
Okay, yes, you're right. The Financial Policy Committee, they met last week. Minutes of that meeting were published today. The Guardian, which is a left-leaning newspaper here in Britain, appear to have picked up on some of those comments made about the economic health of businesses, which we all know and are aware of. I've got a couple of those lines here. It states that, however, intelligence from the bank's regional agents suggested that there were some pockets of unmet borrowing needs, which might translate into to signs of distress in the coming months. So they were talking about the fact that it's been a success with a lot of these firms getting access to credit, not just the bounce back loan of £50,000, but a lot of these big corporate loans, which I believe were going up to almost £500 million. And they said some companies may struggle because they were highly leveraged or unprofitable prior to March. And this is a discussion that Chancellor Rishi Sunak has been pretty brutal about recently when he's talking about businesses and the fact that he can't save businesses. Not every business is viable. And it is important to make clear that, of course, before the pandemic, there were some businesses that were struggling anyhow. And the Bank of England have just made a case to say that, yes, these businesses will struggle in the next coming months. That hasn't been picked up by the markets, and that's because there was a more pressing discussion taking place today, and that was the Bank of England Governor, Andrew Bailey. He was actually speaking at an online event which was hosted by the European Commission, and he actually said some pretty positive comments about Brexit that did cheer investors. He does believe a deal can be done. He thinks both sides will benefit from a deal, both Britain and the EU, and he wants them basically to knock their heads together. So that did cheer up the markets. And as you were discussing with Chelsea and Frankfurt there, lots of information is coming out of the States, and, you know, we're on the countdown to the US election. So, of course, also that has cheered up investors because Donald Trump appears to be much better. The FTSE All-Share and intraday is up 0.62%. The FTSE 100 is up by 0.54%, and the FTSE 250 is up by 1.20%. In the currencies, the British pound is down on the US dollar by 0.09%, unchanged against the euro, and down on the Japanese yen by 0.04%.
And in corporate news today, you talked about EasyJet with BC in the morning, and Chelsea, of course, still talked about it this afternoon. Aside from outlining how the COVID-19 crisis has plunged deep into the red, the airline is pleading for more government help. What form of help are they asking for now?
Fortunately, we're not sure because the only thing we're certain of is the fact that EasyJet have lost money. They did do their pre-tax profit for Q3, and it shows that they lost £325 million. But all of this speculation does come from a Sky News report. We know yesterday EasyJet were in discussions with some government officials, and part of that discussion appears to have leaked. But sources close to EasyJet have stated on the record today in response to Sky News that they are not asking the government for any sort of state aid yet being the key word there. But they did receive a £600 million loan from the Bank of England earlier this year when the pandemic really took hold. We know that thousands of their staff were on the government's furlough scheme, which will wind up at the end of this month. And they did put a statement out in May saying that they would have to cut about 30% of their workforce. But again, you have discussed this extensively, haven't you? We know that the airline industry is suffering. They got a little bit of a boost in the summer when these travel corridors were open. They've now subsequently closed. So it is going to be really, really difficult. So again, yeah, there's lots of speculation, but EasyJet haven't put anything on the record yet, but perhaps we'll know more later this week.
Let's look at TalkTalk. Shares in the telecoms company surged by 16% after it agreed to talks about £1.1 billion takeover bid. What more do we know about this deal?
Oh, yes. Well, Tosca Fund is a British company owned by a wealthy British man. He's put in a bid to take over TalkTalk, as you said, for £1.1 billion. I think the shares have been priced much lower than what TalkTalk would have preferred, but they're going ahead with this. The discussions are going forward. Telecommunications is extremely competitive across Europe, so there's still going to be lots of eyes checking the dots on the I's and the crossing of the T's in this deal. deal, and that's really because last week the Competition and Markets Authority did say that they were going to be scrutinising a takeover bid which would have merged O2 and Virgin Media and Virgin Mobile. This is a very similar deal, and if the deal was to go ahead, then Tosca Fund would be one of the biggest telecommunications companies in Europe, and there are lots of competition discussions to take place from that. But for TalkTalk, it's good. As you said, their shares at the announcement of this takeover bid rose by 15%, and that's really because they've had a tumultuous couple of years. Apparently, according to reports from the BBC, which I read earlier, Ofcom, which is the industry regulator, the most complaints they've had about any telecommunications firm from customers is about TalkTalk. So I'm sure they're really keen to get this off their hands, but we'll have to wait and see because, again, there is going to be lots of scrutiny regards to this deal.
All right, thanks for updating us on those. Thank you, Juliana. Okay, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll bring you more stories and, of course, our commodities market update. To stay with us. And the World Bank sees sub-Saharan Africa reversing an economic contraction next year as countries in the region begin to ease movement restrictions, even as the impact of the coronavirus will endure for years to come. In its outlook for the region, the Washington-based lender says the pandemic has put a decade of hard-won economic progress at risk. Sub-Saharan Africa's gross domestic product is on track to shrink 3.3% this year, its worst performance on record due to the combined effects of the disease and lower oil and commodities prices. Growth of about 2.1% could follow in 2021 and 3.2% in 2022. Still, the fallout of the pandemic remains hard to predict. In the meantime, the bank says an additional 150 million people could be pushed into extreme poverty by the end of next year as conflict, climate change, and COVID-19 combine to end 2 decades of progress in raising the living standards of those on the lowest incomes. The bank says the proportion of the world's population living on less than $1.90 a day was expected to rise from 9.1% to 9.4% during 2020, with the increase concentrated in countries with already high poverty rates. And Nigeria's former Finance Minister, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and South Korea's first female trade minister, Yoon Myung-hee, have emerged as the final 2 out of 5 candidates in the race to lead the World Trade Organization. This comes after members of the European Union endorsed both women as candidates to lead the 25-year-old Intergovernmental Trade Organization earlier this week. David Walker, the ambassador from New Zealand, who is the General Counsel Chair for the Selection Committee, says the ultimate objective of the selection process is to secure a consensus decision by members on the next Director General. Meanwhile, a third and final round of consultations will begin later this month and is scheduled to run until November 6, when the WTO aims to agree by consensus on the next Director General on November the 7th, amid concerns of U.S. support for the final selection. And on commodities market update, we're talking sugar as the demand for this commodity has increased globally. What's driving this demand? Mayowa Ige, one of the research analysts with Financial Derivatives Company, will tell us. Hello, Mayowa. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for that. So,
obesity is a major problem of, modern day living. 39% of the world is considered to be obese. Many are of the view that sugar consumption is the leading cause of obesity and other health issues such as diabetes and heart diseases. In the past 3 months, we've seen the price of sugar increase by about 2% due to increased demand. Just wondering, how is possible that the demand for sugar will increase at a time of great concern over overweight citizens?
So the lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic led to a decline in the consumption of sugar and hence demand of sugar. And this affected the price of sugar. It led to a decline in the prices of sugar. And over the past few months, we have actually seen more countries opening up and easing their lockdown restrictions. And we've also seen economic activities resuming. I mean, look at Nigeria, for instance. And so this has led to an increase in the demand for sugar. So it's not like sugar is increasing because more people are consuming. It's just an increase to what it was pre-lockdown, basically. And also the increase in prices that we can see currently also has to do with recent disruption in supply. There was a large decline in the production of from major sugar producing areas like Thailand and the EU, which was caused by adverse weather conditions, and this led to a decline in prices.
Brazil, the largest producer of sugar, has a yield per hectare of about 743 hectograms. This is similar to other major sugar producers at a yield lower by approximately 380%. Nigeria's production has been suboptimal. What is responsible for the underproduction of sugar in Nigeria?
So there are a number of challenges affecting sugar production in Nigeria. One of the challenges is the issue of land acquisition. We have private investors that have issues accessing enough land for production of sugar. For instance, we look at Dangote Group. They had to review their production target downwards to about 1 million metric tons because they didn't have access to enough land. And this is because most of our sugar plantations have been converted to residential areas. Also, there are also other issues like unattractive prices for industrial sugarcane locally. And this has discouraged most of our local farmers, and so they're forced to put their attention and resources to other crops that are profitable, like cassava. There's issue of high cost of fertilizer, limited number of mills for milling sugar, and also external factors such as flooding and communal clashes in the north. These are some of the challenges that have greatly hampered the production of sugar in the country.
All right, a quick one before I let you go, Mayowa. There is the industrial use and tabletop consumption of sugar. In Nigeria, sugar is mainly used for tabletop consumption, while Mauritius, for example, uses sugar cane, its main cash crop, to produce about a quarter of its daily electricity needs, combined with other renewable sources. Can Nigeria ever get to that point where it could use its sugar production for both industrial and table demand?
Well, the federal government will have to address the challenges I just mentioned before we can get to that place where our production is increased. For instance, Nigeria has a sugar master plan with the objective of boosting sugar production in the country, also boosting ethanol production and electricity generation. Ethanol is a byproduct of sugar and is used as a source of renewable energy. This plan has been in place and there was a target for this year, I think, but then the target has been unmet and the success of this plan has been greatly hampered by the issues I just mentioned. And so till Nigeria can actually address these issues, we wouldn't be able to increase our production of sugar. And if we eventually do address these issues, our production will be increased. And with increased production, we will spend less amount of money importing sugar because we are the largest importer of sugar in sub-Saharan Africa. We spend a lot of money importing sugar. If we have increased production, we wouldn't have to import so much. We would have a chance to conserve our foreign reserves. And also with the byproducts of sugar, there are many industrial uses it can be used for that would help boost our economy, which would be beneficial to us.
All right, thanks, Mayowa. Let's just hope we get it right eventually. Mayowa Ige is one of the research analysts with Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for your time. And finally, global food prices have risen for a fourth straight month by 5% year-on-year in September. Data from the Food and Agriculture Organization's Food Price Index growth in global food prices was led by strong increases for cereals and vegetable oils. The FAO's index, which measures monthly changes for a basket of cereals, oilseeds, dairy products, meat and sugar, averaged 97.9 points last month. This is a downwardly revised 95.9 in August. The FAO also says worldwide cereal harvests remain on course to hit an annual record in 2020, even though it slightly trimmed its previous forecast. And that's it on the program. Thank you for watching. I'm Chimeze Obi.